Shana Tova. The legend of the Fisher King tells of a wounded king unable to tend to himself and his people, turning his once vast kingdom into a barren wasteland. All he is able to do is sit in a small boat on the river near his castle and fish, waiting for a hero to come and heal him and his land. One day, a simple man wanders near the castle and discovers the king sitting alone. And being a simple man, he did not see a king. He only saw a man alone, a man in pain. And he asked the king, "What ails you, friends?" The king replied, "I am thirsty and am in need of some water to cool my throat." As the king began to drink, his wound healed, and the barren wasteland began to bloom once again. Terry Gilliam's 1991 film, The Fisher King, retells this legend in modern-day Manhattan. Edwin, a lonely caller to a popular radio show, seeks connection. He calls every day hoping for kindness, for someone to just listen to him. Instead, Jack Lucas, played by Jeff Bridges, the cynical radio host, mocks him, dismisses him, pushes him aside. Edwin's desperate cry for connection is ignored, and the result is catastrophic. Perry, played by Robin Williams in one of his finest performances, is left shattered when the tragedy takes his wife, plunging him into a world of grief and loneliness. He retreats into fantasy, wandering the streets of Manhattan, haunted and alone. Jack, overwhelmed by guilt, falls too, from celebrated star to broken recluse. Both men are wounded. Both men are wandering the barren wasteland. Years later, Jack and Perry's cross paths. At first, Jack tries to fix Perry with money and material goods. But Perry does not need a transaction. He needs a companion. And so Jack begins to sit with him, to listen to him, to see him. Jack's redemption comes not when he fixes Perry, not when he tries to solve him, but rather when he looks him in the eye and says, "What ails you, friend?" By the end of their journey, Jack and Perry are no longer wandering in the wasteland. Connection healed their pain and their trauma. They were once again able to see the world in all of its vibrant color. The Fisher King teaches us that healing begins when someone dares to see and to ask us, "What ails you?" Our Torah begins with that same truth, that the first problem in creation is not sin nor death, but loneliness. On the sixth day of creation, Adam, the first human, stood in the Garden of Eden, surrounded by God's astounding handiwork. The trees were heavy with fruit, seas flowed with crystal blue water, animals and birds filled the sky and the earth. God took Adam on a tour of the garden. "Look at my works, see how beautiful they are. For your sake I created them all." And yet, Adam was not content. As Adam named each animal 2 by 2, elephants, lions, giraffes, he noticed that each animal had its partner. Adam finished and said, "Everyone has a partner but me. Surrounded but solitary, present but unseen, alive but incomplete." And so God declared, "It is not good for a person to be alone." The first fly in the ointment of creation is human loneliness. Through Eve's formation, Adam grew in many ways. The rabbis teach that her presence symbolized the universal value of deep and meaningful relationships. With her by his side, Adam found goodness, help, joy, blessing, and peace. Without connection, Adam was simply flesh and blood. With connection, he became fully human. If creation teaches us that it is not good for human beings to be alone, the story of Honi the circle maker asks an even harder question. What happens when we are surrounded but people and still unseen? One day, Honi saw a man planting a carob tree. "How long until it bears fruits?" he asked. 70 years, the man replied. "But will you live to eat it?" Honi wondered. "Just as my ancestors planted for me, I plant for my children," the man said. Honi sat down, ate some bread, and a cliff formed around him. He disappeared from sight and slept for 70 years. When he awoke, he saw a certain man gathering carobs from the tree. Honi said to him, "Are you the one who planted from this tree?" The man said to him, "I am his son's son." Honi said to him, "I can learn from this that I have slept for 70 years. And indeed, he saw that his donkey had sired several herds during those many years. Honi returned home, but his descendants did not know him. In the study hall, people quoted his Torah. But when he said, "I am Honi," they did not believe him. They paid him no respect. Surrounded but unseen. Quoted but not recognized. Admired but not known. Honi prayed for mercy and died. And Rava, our great sage, explains either companionship or death. Is it any wonder to be physically surrounded by people, even praised by them, yet invisible? That is a kind of death. It is not unlike our world of social media, millions of followers, likes, comments, and yet no one really knows us. We are quoted, we are noticed, but we are not seen. And sometimes ignoring someone's yearning for connection does not just wound them, it changes history. The Talmud tells of a story of Timnah, who longed to join the people of Israel. She approached Abraham, who refused her, then Isaac, who turned her away, then Jacob, who also rejected her plan. Desperate to be connected, she became the concubine of Eliphaz, Esau's son, hoping that through proximity to the Israelites, she might be accepted. But she never was. Instead, she gave birth to Amalek, who became Israel's mortal enemy. Why did such an enemy arise? Our rabbis say because our ancestors rejected Timnah's yearning for connection. Her plea for belonging was ignored, and the result was generations of hatred. When we ignore those who seek connection, we do not only wound their spirits, we lose a piece of our own. The part that reflects B'Tselem Elohim, the image of God that is only whole when mirrored in one another. As Rabbi Menachem of Chernobyl said in his work Me'or Einayim, and you need to know that when you speak with a human being, with whomever you speak, you are speaking with that person's soul and life force. To disregard that encounter is to diminish the divine spark. And when those sparks are left unrecognized, the whole community grows dim. Honi, unseen by his community, prayed for mercy and chose death. Timnah, turned away by our ancestors, gave birth to Amalek. These ancient stories remind us that ignoring the cry for connection does not just harm one soul, it scars the collective. What Honi and Timnah experienced were not isolated tragedies, but timeless expressions of the many forms loneliness can take. Psychologist Jeremy Noble teaches us that loneliness comes in many forms. Honey suffered psychological loneliness, surrounded by others yet unseen, longing for recognition, longing for someone to say, "I know you, I hear you, I believe you." Timna suffered of societal loneliness, turned away again and again, excluded from belonging, her yearning for connection rejected. And at their root lies existential loneliness, the deep, haunting question of whether our lives matter when no one affirms our presence. Each is a prison of its own, and each demands connection as its cure. And today in 2025, those scars have only increased. Former U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy warns that we are living through an epidemic of loneliness, a public health crisis as deadly as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. The Harvard study of adult development, one of the longest-running studies on happiness in the world, teaches us that the greatest predictor of a good life is not wealth, not fame, not power. It is whether we have someone who will sit beside us when the world falls apart. It is knowing that when we stumble, we will not stumble alone. And yet, more and more of us are stumbling alone. Sociologist Robert Putnam, in his book Bowling Alone, described how civic and communal life has hollowed out. More people bowl today than ever before, but the bowling leagues are empty. The laughter, the rivalries, the sense of team, gone. Families have 60% fewer picnics, 40% fewer dinners together. Civic halls, volunteer groups, even synagogues are emptier. The pins still fall, but the silence is deafening. Too often in our search for meaning, we turn inward. We make ourselves the center. Autonomy can be valuable, but without belonging, it leaves us hollow. Rav Joseph Soloveitchik called this the loneliness of the majestic self, the part of us that seeks mastery. It builds towers, conquers worlds, wins accolades. It thrives on success and ownership, on being the one who can stride into a room and command it. Our culture rewards this self, celebrates this self. But the majestic self cannot soothe our loneliness. We cannot build our loneliness away, nor buy it away, nor conquer it away. In fact, achievement often isolates us further. Many climb ladders by stepping on those below us. Many artists retreat into solitude, sacrificing relationships for greatness. The higher we rise, the lonelier we become. And so Rav Soloveitchik describes a second force, the covenantal self. This self does not live by achievement, but rather by relationship. It seeks presence over power, love over gain, connection over control. This self yearns to be seen, to be known, to be bound in covenant with others and with God. We keep feeding the majestic self, telling ourselves the more success will finally satisfy. Promotions, accolades, possessions, we reach for them, hoping they will solve our crisis of self. But loneliness is not healed by mastery. Only covenantal presence restores the soul. This is the choice before us. The majestic self versus the covenantal self. Vanity or love. As Ecclesiastes teaches, two are better than one, for if one falls, the other can lift them up. Our sages captured this truth. Rabbi Yochanan once said, "A prisoner cannot free himself from prison." Loneliness is that prison. We cannot unlock it from the inside. We need someone else to reach in, to extend a hand and say, "I am here with you. What ails you, my friend?" But how? How do we choose this covenantal self? How do we unlock the prison for the more than 55 million American adults who say they often or always feel lonely? Vivek Murthy reminds us, quote, "You don't worry about moving the whole. You worry about getting a few people to move together against gravity." Sometimes courageous connection does not begin with crowds. It begins with one table, one meal, one act of presence. Derek Black, today known as Adrian Black, was raised at the heart of white nationalism, the child of a KKK leader and the godchild of David Duke. In college, when Derek's background was exposed, outrage swept across the campus. Most of the other students turned away except for one. Matthew Stevenson, an Orthodox Jew, did something courageous. He invited Derek to his weekly Shabbat dinners. Quote, "I have a fundamental belief that at the root of every person is a spark of the Creator. There's something that binds everyone, even if they are behaving in ways I find reprehensible. We still share a common humanity, and that can't be erased. Even if someone is doing things that are really against me or harming me or society, I feel somewhat of a responsibility to that person," Matthew reflected. As a child, Matthew had accompanied his mother to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Quote, "I saw a lot of people who had been in very dark places in their lives. Many of these people transformed from tornadoes of vulnerability to beacons of hope. So there was not a doubt in my mind that people like Derek can transform." And so Matthew reached out to Derek when no one else would, not to persuade him, but to connect. Over the next 2 years, his Shabbat table grew. Around it sat immigrants, Jews, people of color, LGBTQ+ students, the very people Derek had been taught to hate. They ate together, they shared together, they saw one another's humanity. Derek eventually renounced white nationalism publicly, and he credited those Shabbat dinners as the catalyst for his transformation. Each of us here carries the power to heal a life, not by fixing, not by solving, but by showing up, by reaching out a hand, by making room at our table, by calling someone's name so they know that they are not invisible. These are not grand gestures, they are small, holy acts. Leo Buscaglia once wrote, quote, "Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, all of which can turn a life around. And yet they take courage. Courage to silence the voice of our majestic self that insists achievement is enough, that success will satisfy, that we do not have the time. Courage to risk rejection, courage to say, 'You matter, I see you.' And when we dare this kind of presence, light enters the room. The Hasidic masters taught darkness cannot be swept away, shouted away, or beaten away. Only light can banish darkness. One candle can change the room. One act of connection can change a life. The Fisher King's barren land bloomed again, not through magic, but through presence. When someone dared to notice and ask, What ails you, friend? And maybe that's all it takes for us to. One act of courage, one invitation, one ship waving to another across the lonely sea. As Trey Anastasio of Fish wrote, "So while you're on this lonely trip, keep a watch for other ships, and if by chance our vessels pass, perhaps we'll finally meet at last." We are all on this lonely trip, but if we keep watch for one another, if we dare to wave, to invite, to sit beside each other, the wastelands will bloom again, and our world aching for connection will live again. May this year be one where we notice, where we invite, where we reach out. May we choose connection over indifference, light over darkness, love over fear. And may the barren places in our lives, in our communities, in our world bloom again. Shana Tova.